Boom, da-ba-doom, boom, da-ba-doom.
Hey guys, Chris Peach here, and welcome to the Money Peach podcast. Hey, do you remember growing up learning how to handle money? Yeah, neither do I. So that's why we're here today, to make your money fun again. You know, we're going to talk about the principles in life that actually matter when it comes to managing your money in a way that works. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Money Peach podcast. Before we jump into another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast, I want to take a second to talk to you guys about my free budgeting form. You know, the first step to getting on any financial plan is to measure the money. And the only way to measure the money is if you are living on a monthly budget. So after this episode, head on over to moneypeach.com and please download my free budgeting form. There's thousands of people now all over the world who are taking back control of their money using this same form each and every month. The number one habit of highly successful people is they're proactive. So be proactive with your money and get yourself on a budget. Welcome back, everyone, to another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. I'm Chris Peach. This is episode 57. Now, my guest on the show today is Janelle Diller. Janelle is the co-founder, co-author of the children's book series Pack and Go Girls. The reason why Janelle's on the show is actually through Monica Louie. So if you remember back in episode 48, we had Monica Louie come on the show to talk about Facebook ads and how they work inside not only my business, but other businesses as well. At the end of the show, when we stopped recording, I asked her if she knew of anybody really interesting that would be fun to interview. And she said right away, oh, you got to talk to Janelle Diller and Lisa from Pack and Go Girls. They're in the same mastermind group and they have an amazing story. So I reached out to Janelle and she was, yes, let's do it. And she has an amazing story, talks about why she's doing it. And so without further ado, let me bring on Janelle Diller, co-author, co-founder from Pack and Go Girls. Alrighty, Janelle, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Super excited to have you on the show. This has been about a month in the works now, and now we're here. I know you're a little bit nervous, but you're going to be fine because the Money Peach audience is going to love to listen to your story. It's an amazing story, and that's why we had you on. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on, share your story, teach us something about how you guys got started in your business, and just share your great idea with us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting us on the show. It's great to be here. I love to talk about my books. I love to talk about writing, and I especially love to talk about Pack and Go Girls. So this is great.
Perfect. So before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, let me know, tell us where you're at, where do you live, a little bit about you so we kind of get the idea, the picture in our head of who we're talking to here.
Okay. Well, first of all, right now I'm in Colorado Springs, and that's where I've lived for the last 38 years, so a long time. But it seems like life takes me all over the place. I do leadership training part of the time, and that takes me literally all over the world. I was in Shanghai this year. I'll be in Singapore and Spain and Austria, so it's a really fun job, but it's part-time, which makes it even better. My husband and I have a sailboat, and we spend about half the year in Mexico, where it's warm in the winter. And then we also have a canal boat in Europe, and we spend about 6 weeks there. So life is very, very, very good. The only problem is it does seem like we play too much. But it's fun.
So this is cool. I knew you were in Colorado. I knew you were in Colorado Springs. So real quick, tell me about this. I'm in Arizona, so we're friends with Mexico. They're just south of us. We go there quite a bit. Where is your boat in Mexico? Where is that at?
Well, we have it in Puerto Vallarta, which is on the West Coast, and that's just a great sailing area. There are great anchorages, and there's a wonderful community. So we spend enough time there that we feel like, hey, we probably have as many or more friends in Mexico as we do in Colorado, even though we've lived here for so long. So it's a fun way to live. It really is.
Your canal boat? Where's your canal boat?
Right now it's in the Netherlands, and we'll end up in Belgium and France over the next couple of years. And that's been really interesting too. As you can see, I love to travel. So that's part of what got me to Pack and Go Girls in the first place, because I just love to travel. And I want to share that love with little girls.
Very, very cool. So, okay, so now we know who you are. I mean, I think that's really, really cool. I think a lot of us listening are thinking, man, I want that life. I want to go and travel. I want to go see different parts of the world. And now we're talking to someone that's actually doing it. And so let me ask you this. Before Pack and Go Girls, how long have you been traveling the world like this? Have you always been doing this, or is this something new?
You know, I am very fortunate because my dad was an adventure traveler. And so even as a young child, we traveled places. I went to Cuba before the revolution. That tells you how old I am, and you don't have to do the math on it. But he loved to travel. He took my 2 older sisters and me out of school, and our baby sister, who was 20 months old at the time, and my mom and dad, and we traveled through Latin America. This was in the early 1960s. So I was on the Amazon River. We were in the Argentine Chaco. We saw Machu Picchu. It was an amazing experience because it really shaped who I was. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, literally, 1,000 people. And if it hadn't been for experiences like that, I don't know when I would have really understood or explored the world. I think one iconic moment for me from all of that was when we were in Buenos Aires, and we would go to lunch, and Argentina, like much of Latin America, has this wonderful bread called bolillos. My mom, who had this ginormous purse where she could carry around the lives of 6 people while we were traveling, would take all the bread from the table that we didn't eat and put that in her bag. Then we would go sit in front of the Pink House, which is the equivalent of the White House in Argentina. Giant plaza filled with millions and millions of pigeons. And I remember my sister saying to me, Janelle, we need to lean down like this and feed the birds with the Pink House in the background, because when you get into 4th grade next year, look in your geography book, and there's going to be a picture of 2 little girls feeding pigeons, just like this. So we did. And as you can imagine, the first thing I looked for when I got into 4th grade, I pulled out that geography book and I paged through until I found that picture of 2 girls feeding the birds in front of the Pink House. Why that was so important was that trip, and then a moment later where I saw children doing the same thing told me, hey, when I see these other pictures in books, those children are real too. Those events are real. Those places are real places. And my dad's gift to all of us is that he made us very, very curious about the world with our travel. So I'm grateful for that.
So that was like your catalyst point, your moment at a young age when you didn't realize it then, but now you look back going, the reason why I've been a world traveler, the reason why Pack and Go Girls exists is actually, it looks like it started from those moments.
Oh, it did. It did. And, I've been very fortunate because I did grow up in a family where traveling was valued, and my dad made a good living, but he put our money into travel. We didn't live in a huge fancy house. I wore hand-me-downs for my sisters, but yet travel was really important. And I think that that's a piece that we want to share too, because people think, oh, you have to spend $5,000 to go to Disneyland for a week. Well, yeah, if you go to Disneyland, it's going to cost you $5,000. But years later, with my husband and I, took our sons out of high school for about 4 or 5 months and went to Central America and lived. And it was a $12,000 trip. You choose the places you want to go, you travel on the cheap, and traveling on the cheap doesn't lessen the experience. In fact, I often think it makes the experience more exotic and more intense because you're experiencing the world outside of a 5-star resort. It's pretty cool.
What do you do to be able to afford not just the amount, all right, it's $12,000 or something, but afford the time away? Like, what is your career, your job, or your husband's job that allows you to get up and leave and do that? Because that's curious for me is, what could we be doing differently in our lives? What kind of job do you have where it allows you that freedom?
Well, at the time I was working for Oracle, and I simply took a leave of absence. And we chose to do that knowing that, okay, there was lost income from that period, and our bills went on. That $12,000 was the actual cost of traveling. But for a family of 4, for 4 or 5 months, that really wasn't bad. So I took a leave of absence. My husband was a contractor. He's retired now. And so he just simply didn't take any jobs for that period. And we made a very conscious choice. We said, look, we're not going to have money coming in from this time. But what's more important is that we're building the connection to our kids. We had a great relationship, but that time in Central America was phenomenal. It was an absolute bonding time that all of us look back on and say that was really, really important. These days, because I do leadership training, I have the luxury of living wherever I have access to an airport. I only do it about 10 or 12 weeks a year. So I'm semi-retired at this point, and that gives me, it keeps the foot in the business world for me, which I really enjoy. I love the job that I do. And it also gives me the luxury of then having a lot of time to put towards things like Pack and Go Girls or writing.
Okay, so I didn't know a lot of this. This makes a lot more sense because we're going to jump into Pack and Go Girls now. So now I understand the whole inspiration, the reason behind the Pack and Go Girls. And so let's people are probably thinking, okay, you've mentioned Pack and Go Girls 3 times. What is he talking about? So kind of give me the overview or let us know what Pack and Go Girls is, because I think it's really unique. I'm on your site right now. I love your site. I know your inspiration for it, but let us know, what is it all about?
Okay, I love this concept. I'm so proud of it. I have no trouble just championing it over and over. What it is, we write children's travel adventure mysteries that inspire girls to take on the world. There are mysteries. We have them tour haunted castles in Austria. They catch thieves in Mexico. They save dolphins and turtles in Brazil. They search for lost golden temples in Thailand. And they even chase aliens in Australia. And while they're reading these books, we hope at the same time that they're inspired to embrace adventure and be curious, value the things that unite us, celebrate the differences that make us unique. And in short, we're inspiring them to take on a boundaryless world and to become global girls.
Wow. So the books that you've written, I see you have 4 books, correct?
We have a total of 9 books plus an activities coloring book that kind of brings it all together. Some fun things to do on a rainy day or coloring pages, that sort of thing. But we have 3 books about Austria, and they are a little girl from Colorado who goes to Austria and meets a girl from Austria, her own age, and they have these adventures. And then we have 2 books about Mexico, and they are about a little girl from Seattle who sails to Mexico. You can imagine where that came from. And a book from a girl from Boston who goes to Thailand, and a Cuban American who goes to Brazil, and a Chinese American who goes to Australia. And the Boston girl is African American. So one of the things that we've tried to do is not just take our girls out to the world, but we've also tried to reflect the diversity in American life as well. So we're trying to make our American characters as multicultural as the international characters.
That's really cool.
And that was something that I don't want to say we stumbled across, because we had an intuitive sense that was important. But early on, I'd written the first 2 Austria books, and we were starting in on Mexico. And Lisa, my business partner, and I had this conversation about, we should really have multicultural characters. And we decided we would have an Asian American girl who traveled to Mexico. And so I have a friend who is Chinese American, and I got on the phone with her, and she was very helpful about, all right, well, write about it like this, or here would be something that you could include, or here are some characteristics of Chinese American children who are first generation. And, we were talking, and I realized along the way that we were too far along with the book. I would have had to make a bunch of changes to the book itself. We were already in the illustrating process, and the illustrator would have had to make some changes. So we decided to put that on hold. But what stuck with me in that phone conversation was that my friend said, Janelle, I would have loved to have a book like this when I was a child. I would have loved to have seen myself on the pages of a book. This is so important what you're doing. And even though intellectually I knew it was important, that made it visceral for me. And then from then on, we were on a mission, not just to get kids to explore the world, but to represent the kids who are reading books every day in the United States.
Wow. So who is the author? I mean, are you guys co-authoring this, or are you doing all the authoring? Because I know you have a business partner, Lisa.
Right. Lisa Travis.
So how do you guys manage this together?
That's a great question. So I've written the Austria, Mexico, and Australia series, and she's doing Thailand and Brazil. And we will come out with a book about, it'll be a country in Africa. We haven't selected it yet, but we want to represent all 6 continents before we start repeating and doing other countries. And then all the other things that go along with writing and publishing that's been an interesting process to divide.
So how do you manage that then? I'm really interested in this. I've had a lot of different interviews over the last couple of months on the podcast where a lot of people, I mean, even just recently we had two 20-year-old kids that started, I shouldn't call them kids now, they're CEOs and CTOs of their business, but they start their business together. And it was interesting when I said, how did you guys divide that up? Because partnerships can be tough. And I think a lot of times people are thinking it would be great to do a partnership, but I think there's also a challenge there because, where's the line between, how do I want to say it? How do you guys divide up, how the business is structured? I mean, to me, I think that's a challenge for so many people that get started. I mean, how many times have we heard, and I don't say this is going to happen, but how many times have we heard, somebody starts a business and things weren't etched out in the very beginning, and then a year later, there's awkwardness. How do you and Lisa overcome that?
Well, that is a great question, particularly because my dad was in a partnership, my mother was in a partnership, I have a sister who was in a partnership, and while all of them worked, man, those were difficult relationships at times. And so I went into this with trepidation. Lisa and I had been good friends for, 10 years already. And so we were nervous about losing our friendship. And yet we had worked together in enough situations that we knew that we had a good working relationship. We really respected what the other person brought. And we knew how important it was that we worked well together. And that was something that we've leveraged ever since. We both bring different talents to this. So I came in as the writer because I'd already done a lot of writing. I had 7 books published prior to this by traditional publishers. And so I felt like, all right, I know the writing business. What I didn't realize at the time was, yes, I know how to write and I know how to write well, but publishing is such a different animal. And so both Lisa and I really kind of felt our way along through that process. And it's been a lot of learnings, a lot of ups and downs, but we feel like we're producing a really high quality product. The books have won a number of national awards and they've won regional awards. They've gotten great reviews. Parents, kids, teachers love them because they are so much fun. So we feel like we're doing a good job, but man, it's come with a lot of work behind it.
Sure. I mean, and that's important to mention. I think so many times we see someone having success and we don't see what was going on, the late hours, the early mornings, the long conversations, the editing and all. We don't see that. So we just kind of see what we want to see, which is the success. And we think, oh, overnight success, right? And I always tell people there's no overnight success. Or only if you could only imagine the amount of work that went in to create what you've created, it wouldn't even do it justice. But I want you to take us through that. So I know someone's listening right now and they're thinking, man, I would love to write a book. I've talked to so many people over the years that said, I have a book idea, or actually there's somebody that I want to come on the podcast and he won't come on the podcast until his book is finished. And he was telling me how much work it is to just get one book. You have 7 books plus these children's books as well. What is the process? How does that work? How do you go from your idea to book, to creation, to publishing? Can you walk us through that? Because I'm interested in that as well.
Well, let me start with my own writing experience because I have these other books that I've traditionally published, and now we have the 9 Pack and Go Girls books. And then I also have 3 additional adult books that I've written in the last, I think the first one of those came out in 2015. Writing itself, it's an enormous amount of work. People do look at a book and think, oh, I've got a book in me, and I know how I want to start it. And that's great, but it just takes so much more than that. So for me with Pack and Go Girls, the first 2 countries that I wrote about, Austria and Mexico, were about places that I'd spend a lot of time. My work took me to Austria. It still takes me to Austria probably anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks a year. First of all, I wrote about what I knew. And that helped a whole lot. Lisa, on the other hand, has been to Thailand, but it was a long time ago and it was just a short amount of time. And so for her, even though she had been there, it required a lot more research. So I felt lucky in that way. I was able to write about what I knew. Australia, I've never been to, so that took a lot of research. And for me, it's about figuring out who my characters are, spending a lot of time thinking about who they are, why are they in that country, And we're trying to make it very clear that you don't have to be wealthy to do these things. Travel, people go to other countries for all kinds of reasons other than, oh, I'm on vacation. And so we're trying to build in very thoughtful, logical ways for families to be in another country without having to mortgage the house to do it.
Okay. So when you start your book, though, I mean, when you start writing, how long are your books and how long does it take, from start to finish of just the writing?
So for me, once I know my story, and I do a quick outline so I know where the book's going to go, the books are around 10,000 words. We aim for high second grade reading. So we look at ages 6 to 9 as the reading age. So I start with a pretty clear idea of where I'm going. And because I've done a lot of writing, and I love to write, I find that I do the first draft. I sit down and I knock out that first draft in a week. For Lisa, it goes on over a longer period of time. Because she's doing a lot of research, and even as she's writing, she spent, several months researching Thailand before she sat down to write it. And even then, it took a while. But we also have different demands on our time. I have the luxury of being able to block out a week and just sitting down with my computer.
For those of you wondering, okay, how much is 10,000 words? Can I give you an example? Is most of I would say on average, all the posts on our blog, on the Money Peach blog, they're right around 1,000 words. That's kind of our sweet spot, is the way we like to write. So just think, that's 10 posts that you would read on the blog is about 10,000 words. If you're kind of just trying to think like, how many words is 10,000? But in a book, Janelle, how many pages are we looking at for 10,000 words?
Well, because these are early chapter books and they have a lot of illustrations, the font is larger, there's more space in them. It's about 100 pages. So it's a nice size for a child who's really starting to feel really confident with her reading. And most kids who are right at the target age aren't going to sit down and read that whole book in one setting. Now, we have a lot of 3rd and 4th graders who love our books too, and even 5th graders. And they'll sit down and they'll rip through it, in a couple of hours. So that gives you a little bit of an idea there.
Very cool. All right, so you get the book written. What is the next step?
So a lot of editing goes on before we ever hand it over to our illustrator. Our illustrator is Adam Turner, and he is just a phenomenal. He'll read the books, and then he'll come up with the illustrations. And sometimes we'll say, well, where did you get that? And he said, well, that's what it said in the book. It's like, well, you're right. We did write that. So he's amazing. Absolutely love what he did with the Australia book. He did all kinds of things with interesting perspectives. It's Mystery of the Min Min Lights, and it's a sheep are disappearing on a sheep station, and they think it might be a UFO that's stealing them. And he just did a wonderful job of creating that tension, and they're fun, really fun illustrations.
How did you find him? How did you find him as an illustrator?
Lisa had a connection with a business group, and it was a connection out of that. He lives in Arizona, and we've actually met him. We've spent time with him over the last number of years. So, and we do all of this by email. Once in a great while, we'll get on Skype and talk to each other. But most of the time, he's just great. He can read our minds.
What would life feel like if you no longer had to worry about money? What would life look like with $10,000 in the bank and zero debt? Do you realize you're really only a few decisions away from living life on your terms and not the bank's? How do I know this? Well, because we were once living paycheck to paycheck, completely broke and facing a mountain of debt. However, fast forward to today, we're debt-free, we're building wealth, and we live life on our terms, not the bank's. So now it's your turn. I would love for you to join me on my free workshop where I share the same step-by-step system we use to take back our life and our money once and for all. So head on over to moneypeach.com/workshop and grab your free spot in this online training that you're going to absolutely love. Once again, that's moneypeach.com/workshop. It's cool that you have a virtual business where you literally can have people in all different parts of the world. You can be in all different parts of the world creating something really special like this. I think this is a really, really cool idea. The next question I have is, so what does it cost to get started in something like this? If we were looking at, look, I'd like to create a book. What kind of costs are associated with that?
Well, for kids' books are expensive because of the illustrations. So we figured that we probably have, I think our first book, it probably took around $6,000 to $8,000 to get it to market, but that had to do with a lot of branding, cover designs, all kinds of things. My adult books are far less expensive. I still pay for a cover design, and Adam does those for me. And again, great relationship there. And then I also paid for professional editing and professional layout design. So my adult books are more like, probably around $2,000. And you can do it for less. You don't have to pay for a professional editor. You can do your own covers. I know people who do that. You can do your own layout, and you can do your own Kindle conversion or ebook conversion. And so you could do an adult book for virtually nothing. And you can often tell when people have done their books themselves. They just don't have that professional look. So for us, it was really important to spend the money. I think now, because we've got some of the other costs down and we've kind of figured out our process, we're probably spending around $5,000 a book.
Okay, so $5,000 a book. What is the time frame on you outline to publishing?
I'm going to say once we feel like we've got the story pretty solid, it takes about a month to 6 weeks to get the illustrations pulled together. And so we look at a minimum of 2 months. And in reality, because Lisa and I still both have work going and travel and everything else, it often is more like 3 or 4 months.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get the idea, if I was going to, create a book or somebody else is going to create a book, just kind of some ideas of what they can realistically look at as far as cost, as far as time. And I'm glad that you talked about the amount of effort that goes in. I mean, I think it's really, really important to understand that writing a book, I've never met anybody that wrote a book that said, wow, this was a lot easier than I thought. It's always the other way around. Like, this is way, way, way more work than I thought. But when you have a book, the most amazing thing about a book is it lives forever. I mean, it's a piece of work that you created and it doesn't go away. It's there. And I think that's really, really important. So, and I think it also is a great tool to leverage your brand, to let people know about you. Create something that is going to tell your story or market your brand. I think a book is a great way to do that as well. So, I mean, if you're listening, you got some ideas. I think, self-publishing is definitely the first way to go as far as cost effectiveness. But if you have, a little bit of money to throw at it and you want it done, like Janelle said, there is a difference. I mean, we've all read books that were, self-published and we found them for $3 on Amazon. And we've all seen books that were done professionally, and there is a difference. There is a difference. So, but there's also a cost with that. So I think it's really, really cool that you shared that. So where can we find more about Pack and Go Girls? And then also, you said age 6 to 9, correct?
Right.
Okay, so if you have a 6 to 9 year old, you're listening, where can we find out more about Pack and Go Girls?
Well, you can find our website, packandgogirls.com, and it's PACKN GOGIRLS, so packandgogirls.com. And I love what we've done because not only do we have the books, we think they're a great tool to use in the classroom. And so we have a lot of learning activities on our website. We have printables that are downloadable. We've got information about all of the countries. We've got videos of kangaroos in Australia and learning to yodel in Austria, just all kinds of things. We also have teaching resources because we want to make it easier for teachers to use the books in a classroom. And so we've got those resources on Teachers Pay Teachers. We have one for each country series. And again, a lot of activities in reading, writing, math, science, art, just lots of fun things. It's great cross-curriculum learning.
So looking at your website, it looks like by the way, your website's great. I really, really like it.
Thank you.
Very easy to navigate. Looking at your website here, I kind of get the feel that when you're marketing, your marketing is, let's take girls and let's educate them with something fun like traveling and kind of remove a lot of, I would say, the garbage in the world, right? There's so much, throw an iPad in front of your kid and they'll be quiet, right? That kind of stuff. And now we have something really cool that's, not only teaching them to be better readers, but then giving them ideas that you can travel, that you can do amazing things, and you don't have to be a millionaire to do these things. At such a young age, I think that's really cool. Would you agree that your marketing is kind of going towards that? Like, let's educate and empower these 6 to 9 year old girls?
Very much so. Very much so. And again, I do want to go back to the diverse character thing because that's one of those things that we've grown in our awareness. There's been a lot of research out there about how many multicultural characters, non-white characters there are in kids' books these days. First of all, it's a low number. In 2015, the number of white and non-human characters is about 86%. So of that, about 73% are white kids. 12.5% are animals or trucks or whatever. 2.4% are Latin. 7.6% are African or African American. Asians are 3.3%. So if you think about it, a child is more likely to see a truck as a main character as they are to see themselves if they're a non-white minority. And to put that in perspective, what if 75% of all the characters in all the books, or 85% of all the characters in books, were boys? What would girls think about themselves? And what would boys think about themselves? It's so important to stretch kids so that they see kids on pages who look like themselves.
And going back to what you said with your interview, I think that's another important thing is, a lot of the people on the podcast, when they have an idea, they created their idea. One of the things they did is they went back and they surveyed their audience, or they asked questions, or like you did, they got on the phone with somebody and got their expertise, and like the feedback you got is, I wish I would have saw myself in a book when I was a kid. And I think that's powerful because that completely changed kind of the direction you guys went with your business. And I think it's going to be even more impactful now because now, like you said, instead of 2%, right, 2% of Asian American or African American, now it's going to be a higher number because of Pack and Go Girls and kind of this movement, which I think is really, really important.
Yeah. Multicultural kids books is really pushing a lot of this, and we are seeing a shift. There are definitely more books with multicultural characters in them today than there was even 5 years ago. So people are understanding the importance of this. And now it's up to teachers and librarians to say, yeah, we're going to really champion these two because we know that kids need to see themselves on the pages.
This is great. This is really, really cool. I'm glad that you're doing this. I'm really glad you're doing this. Glad you came on the podcast. I know you were nervous to come on and share your story, but it was funny as you said, you go around the world speaking on leadership or teaching leadership. I'm like, whoa, why are we nervous about coming on a podcast? But you did great. You did absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
So packandgogirls.com. We'll have the links in the show notes. So don't worry about writing that down. We'll have links in the show notes. You guys can click through right to that. Janelle, also, I want to talk about, you also have your own books as well. You write adult books. Where can we find those? And tell us a little bit about that.
So those are also on Amazon. You can also get them through Barnes & Noble. They can be ordered from any bookstore. So I've always loved to write. And in fact, I think I've thought different times that I should join a 12-step group, where I start out, hi, my name is Janelle and I have to write. Because I've got this really eclectic group of books that I've written. I've done books for the construction industry. I have a series of grammar textbooks for high school students, and I have Pack and Go. And then I have these adult books. One is a political thriller for these politically thrilling times, and that's called The Virus. That was a finalist in the Colorado Humanities for the Book Award and won some other regional awards. And then my latest is I have 2 books out of a trilogy that are now published. The third one will come out in 2018. And it's Never Enough Flamingos, Never Enough Sisters, and the third one will be Never Enough Lilacs. And these are the total opposite of The Virus. These are a coming-of-age story about a young girl in Kansas during the Depression and World War II. And just totally different. But people who read one will find that they like the writing style. I mean, if they do like the writing style, then they'll enjoy the others. That's what I've had readers tell me. So they're all on Amazon, and both paperback and ebook formats. And yeah, I'd love it if people do buy them and read them and they love them. I'd love a review on Amazon or Goodreads for any of our books, Pack and Go, or for my books.
Definitely. So I'll put links to all those books as well. So Janelle, the last question I want to ask, this is kind of a weird question, but I always ask everyone on the podcast this question, is this: what is the image you have as the home screen on your phone? Oh,
I have Kansas wheat field. And I've lived in Colorado, like I said, for 38 years. But I've got a Kansas wheat field.
And because you grew up in Kansas.
And it's beautiful. I did. My heart's always there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, Janelle. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was really good. I think people listening are going to be now inspired to maybe take the next step, take action into writing a book. And, if you're out there, you're listening, you have a girl that's age 6 to 9. What's the price on your books, Janelle, on the Pack and Go series?
They're all $5.99.
Okay, so we're talking $5 here. Instead of throwing an iPad at the kids and saying, hey, kids, quiet up. Put a book in front of your kids. If you have age 6 to 9 or, in that range or around that range, throw a book in front of them. I mean, it's amazing. Leaders are readers, right? The average person right now in America reads one book a year. And then you look at the average Forbes 400 or the average, the top CEOs in America, they read 60 books a year. And they also make 324 times more than the average person. And you're thinking, okay, there's a correlation here. Reading is important. I'm a huge fan of reading. There's a reason why every single guest on the show, I ask them, what are they reading? What do they recommend? Is because I want you guys to start taking action in your own life as far as personal development. Reading is great. Reading is fun. And there's no reason not to start your 6-year-old on that. Because think about this. What if somebody would have put a book in front of you at 6 and you liked it, right? It wasn't something you didn't like. You actually ended up liking it. You got inspired. I mean, that could have totally changed trajectory of your reading for the rest of your life. And so for $5, head on over to the show notes. We'll have links there. Grab a book for your daughter and take action. I think that's really, really important. Janelle, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll look forward to seeing more of what's going on at Pack and Go Girls. It sounds like you guys are definitely going to create more books.
We absolutely are. We've got Thailand coming out yet this year, and Africa will come out next year. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come on your show and talk about what I'm passionate about. And I hope people find the books. I hope they love them. And I hope that they travel, even if it's just with the book.
Very, very cool. Thanks again, Janelle.
Thank you.
And just like that, we wrap up another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. All the show notes, the links, anything that Janelle and I talked about can be found over at moneypeach.com/session57. That's moneypeach.com/session57. Special thanks go out to my producer, Steve Stewart, my assistant, Kayla Sloan. Without them, this show would not be possible. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same place, with another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. Take care.
Boom, 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 boom.